Hi, Nick Biron at 360 Insights, and wanted to do a video really kind of covering something that we're changing here at 360 Insights. And normally I try not to go too deep into 360 Insights in these videos that we do. Uh, but let me kind of just set the stage a little bit. I do this a lot in my videos. And if you think about the amount of solution providers that are coming out in any industry segment, um, it is just exploding. If you think of year over year, each segment from a software delivery perspective, it is almost growing exponentially in terms of the amount of solution providers out there. And then you couple that with those solution providers are innovating and creating announcements at almost breakneck speeds. I think back to a little bit of nostalgia. About 25 years ago, I used to work for an organization where I designed, built, and configured high-end workstations and servers for engineering environments. And what I found back then is that the major revisions from a software company were typically a couple of years apart. I'm talking big, 2.0s, 3.0s, whatever it might be, were years apart. And then the small little revisions were maybe once a quarter, but they're very small and incremental in nature. Nowadays, we're finding that major revisions and changes are happening multiple times a year, and throughout weekly, monthly, whatever it might be, the changes and revisions that these solution providers are making is just a mountain of just that's not even the right word to use, but it's just crazy. It's amazing how many updates are happening. And I mean, if you're in following any vendor or multiple vendors, you're finding that it's basically be turning into a tsunami of information just being sent out from them. And 360 Insights as a research firm is no different. If you think about it, we get the full fire hose from the vendors on the announcements and updates that they're making. And in some cases, we see emails come through almost once a week from those vendors. And the end result really is becoming a challenge from a research perspective. So I'm actually going to share a challenge as a research firm is that it has become impossible to track all of the vendors and all of the updates across the umbrella of the research areas that we cover here at 360 Insights. In the past, again, it wasn't so much of an issue because typically major revisions, major changes or directions in organizations was about once a year. Maybe a little bit shorter, a little bit longer, depending on the company, but it wasn't as rapid as the state it was today. And there certainly weren't as many solution providers as there are today as well. And that is kind of bringing a bit of a challenge because it is impossible for us to cover every vendor, every update out there. So it comes down to, well, how do we pick and choose how we receive these updates? Who do we cover in our research? And I will tell you, it's a couple different things. One of them is, and I'm going to be frank, it's the vendors that actually show us attention where we are able to sit down and we're able to have conversations with them and get to know about their platform, their go-to-market strategy, and other aspects like that. And then another part of that is as we are going through our research and an analyst finds that there's an interesting vendor that they might not know about, we'll reach out to learn more because there are solution providers out there that we may not know or not have relationships with. And we certainly want to know more about their solutions so that we can cover it in our research, in our discussions. Now, this in lies part of the problem that we're having is, again, there's so many different vendors out there. When you boil it down to it, who do we pick to cover in our research? Who do we pick to have discussions with? Who do we pick to cover in the discussions? And it's really going to come down to, and this is kind of maybe more of an announcement from 360 Insights and a change that we're making is we can only now really focus on the vendors that focus on us and that are able to show us time and attention in a real live conversation. Now, I want to share a couple examples with it because I want to be kind of a little bit more direct when it comes to the standpoint. So earlier today, and this is actually what's leading me to kind of think about doing this video, one of my analysts is working on a research initiative, and we sent out multiple requests from vendors just to learn more about their solution. And one vendor that we haven't spoken to before basically said they don't have the time to speak with us, but we can certainly learn more. All we need during their earnings call. Now, the problem with that is earnings calls are once a quarter, and that really doesn't give us the time and information that we need for the initiative that we're working on right now. And it really just shows that they don't have a lot of interest in working and speaking with 360 Insights. So from that perspective, and if you look at all the different solution providers that are in that same segment as that vendor, it shows if they don't have interest in us, we're not going to have interest in you. And it same thing happens that, we regularly reach out for briefing updates. We regularly reach out to learn more about different solution providers. And what I've come down to, and it's a decision that we're making at 360 Insights, is if we're finding that certain solution providers and vendors are not willing to take the time to have discussions with the team here at 360 Insights, we're not going to show you guys the time and attention because there are so many other great solution providers that we know more about that we can accurately cover in our research. And that's part of it. We want to make sure that whenever we're covering a solution provider, that we're accurately covering them in our research, that we know about their go-to-market strategy, that we know about the things that they really are focusing on as an organization. How are they winning new customers? Why are customers seeing success with them? When we're able to have that information, we're able to accurately cover them in our research, but more importantly, accurately cover them in our discussions. So at the end of the day, if we're not being updated by you directly as a solution provider, meaning having real life conversations, we're not going to be able to cover you from a research standpoint. There are just so many different vendors out there. There's so many different selections that end users can make. At the end of the day, we only can really truly accurately cover someone that we're actually speaking with. You can send us pre-recordings, you can send us email updates, but that's not enough to give us the information that we need to do that type of job. And we've had customers and we've had vendors talk to us and say, well, you can find that information again in our quarterly earnings call. You can find that information on our website, giving us list and information from a website. But that requires a lot more effort from my analyst team to go out and find that information on their own. Again, where there are other solution providers that are so much more willing to just hop on a call and have a conversation. But at the same time, we find that, again, earnings calls are typically once a quarter. So if we're looking at something at the beginning of the quarter, to wait 3 months or 2 months to have that type of information upload is not timely enough for us. And if we go to, for example, the referrals that people give to us on websites, that's typically also behind. Websites are not as updated as frequently as they should to provide more accurate information. There are others that say, well, you can go to, ChatGPT and utilize or Claude, or name your AI platform. But again, we don't know when that information was ingested by those platforms and how old or stale that information for me. At the same time, we're also typically saying, hey, let us talk to a real live customer and have a conversation with them. And typically, a vendor will point us to their website and say, well, we had this conversation with the customer and it's on our website. Well, here's the thing. That interview was conducted by someone from your team, and it doesn't give us a full-fledged understanding of that customer, that situation. And quite honestly, doesn't even allow us to go into the type of questions that we typically ask of when we speak to end users. So this is all around a way to kind of get back to the point of what I was sharing earlier, which is at 360 Insights, we're a research firm. We try to be non-biased. We try to be independent. And at the end of the day, there are so many different vendors and solution providers out there. It is impossible for me and my team to cover everyone out there, every update that they have. So going forward, essentially the way that we're going to be covering the solution providers in the space are the vendors that we have active relationships with, that we're actively speaking with them in an ongoing basis, that we're having real life conversations. If you find that your organization is not being covered in our research and in our discussions, it's because we're not actively having a conversation, or we're not talking enough and we don't know enough about your platform. So I hope this video kind of hits a spot where these solution providers truly understand that we want to cover you. We want to be able to showcase what you have going on, the great things that your organization is doing, and the successes that you're bringing to your customers. But it can only be done if we're having real life conversations with you.